don't we go ahead and get started, and we'll continue to have people coming in as we get this going. But I'm going to go ahead. We want to be mindful of everyone's time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. I'm Dean Hebel. I'm the Executive Director of 10 at the Top, and very appreciative of you taking time to be with us today for the second in our series of virtual conversations about public safety, and we're calling it Beyond the Shield. And for those who were not able to be with us for the first one that we had about a month ago, the purpose and idea of these came from the Creating a Safer Upstate initiative that 10 at the Top launched about a year and a half ago through at first a exploratory committee that looked at, or discovery committee that looked at, ways to bring law enforcement and community leaders together so that we ultimately are creating an upstate where everyone has a role in keeping all of our citizens safe, and we value the lives of our law enforcement officers as well as our community members. And so after that discovery committee finished their work at the end of last year, and that was led by Stan Davis, who is with us today. We continued this year with our committee work. We had co-chairs were Stinson Ferguson and Sheriff Clark from Pickens County. Stinson has since stepped away from that role, but Chief Clark is still our chair of the committee, and we have a number of subcommittees, one of which is led by Chief Matt Hamby and Kim Kegler from Michelin, and that is the group that has led to these conversations around, really the idea of transparency and getting past what we hear in the media around issues related to public safety and law, what the tools and how law enforcement uses them. And so we decided to have a series of workshops, and between now and the end of the year, we will have 4 of them. This is the second one. The first one held in late August was around use of force. And Justine, at some point, if you can put the link to that video in the chat. If you were unable to hear it, it was great conversation. We really got into, I think, the meat around that issue. And then today, for the second one, we are going to look specifically at some of the technologies related to law enforcement and how they're used, some of the misconceptions around them, some of the concerns that the community has, and really hope to get into a little bit more detail around a couple of the different technologies. The third one we'll have later this fall will be around training and recruitment and retention of law enforcement. That is such a tough, challenging issue. And then for our fourth one, so for each of these 3, the format is we'll have Chief Hamby and a couple other law enforcement leaders will talk first about the issue, and then we will turn it over to Jim Shue and Kim Kegler, and they will lead, along with some community leaders, the Q&A component. But for the fourth one, we're going to have towards the end of the year, we're going to flip that, and we're going to hear first from community leaders about some of the concerns they have around community safety, and then have some law enforcement officers there to participate and follow up, in that discussion. And again, the idea for all of these is to be transparent and to recognize that there are, many different components. And unfortunately, what we hear in the media around public safety and the role of both of our community and our law enforcement is often very distorted. So I'm thrilled that you are with us and that we're able to continue to tackle these important topics. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Matt Hamby, who I just have to say has been a wonderful person to work with and champion. I live in Greer, so I feel much safer knowing that he is my chief, and he is doing a great job with this, and really has played a tremendous role. So Matt, I want to thank you first, and then I will turn it over to you to lead the discussion about technology.
Very well. Thank you so much, Dean. Appreciate you being the great organizer that you are and pulling people together and pushing this effort through. Also the leadership of Mayor Terrence Roberts with the city of Anderson and Sheriff Clark over in Pickens, who have also been leaders in our the Safer Upstate initiative, and all of my co-members of our subcommittee who have helped organize this series of panel discussions. I'm very pleased to present a couple of my co-panelists. I'll start with Captain Fred Foreman, who's here with us today. So Fred is a captain at the Simpsonville Police Department, and I believe he spent some time at Malden at another part of his career. But so Captain Foreman has approximately 25 years of experience, and I really know he knows his stuff when it comes to any kind of technology issue and policing. So we're very fortunate to have him today. Not only that, but he is filling in on a very short notice today. So hats off to him. We were going to have Chief Mike Hanshaw from Simpsonville, and something came up very late today that he was not able to be here. So Captain Foreman is really stepping up to the game today, and I really appreciate him being around to contribute. And I think I just saw that Chief Jorge Campos with the Clemson Police Department is joining us today. And he has approximately 30 years of experience. I believe he retired at the Gainesville Police Department in Florida after 28 years of service there. And I believe he came on board in the city of Clemson about a year ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chief, but I believe that's so we're lucky to have him in the upstate of South Carolina. Absolutely. So we've got two really good panelists that'll be joining me, and so we'll talk about, as Dean said, we'll talk about some technology issues. We brought this topic up because as we're trying to discuss and share information, have a discussion with members of our community, we want to make sure that there's an opportunity for us to sort of explain how we use some of these technologies and maybe dispel some confusion and kind of help balance the expectations of what the technologies do and also what they don't do. So we thought that body-worn cameras would be a great discussion topic. So I will speak briefly on that, and so will Chief Jorge Campos, and then we will transition over into some information sharing on the use of license tag readers. And so that's what Captain Foreman will speak on. Simpsonville has done a pretty good job with using that technology in their city. So I believe we have a video that Justine would be able to show, and it's a very brief video. The only purpose of this video is to provide a 30-second visual of what body cams are, just to kind of look and see what they look like. This video was put out by New Orleans Police Department. I just found it on the internet. So if that's queued up, if we could just start with that would be great, Justine.
I feel like the NFPD body-worn program is very, very beneficial to the department and law enforcement as a whole. I think it's really great for evidence. It's nothing like real-time seeing events, incidents, people's emotional impact on scene. It's very also beneficial to the DA's office as well. For it to record, you hit the button twice. You get two beeps, it means starting to record. You'll still see it's blinking red now. So it's actively recording right now. To turn it off, I just hold it and press the middle button for 3 seconds. When you're done So at the end of the day, you go to the charging station. Ours is right over here. I thank New Orleans Police Department being a leader in the body-worn camera program, is amazing. You know, it's great for our city. It's great for our state. It's really great to be a leader in something and having to show other law enforcement agencies, you know, how it's great for us. We're all working together doing the same thing. So we're all on the same page.
Okay, so that provides an opportunity just to see what a body camera looks like, and a very brief explanation. We will elaborate on that today. I want to take you back to 2014, Ferguson, Missouri. I believe we all can remember the incident involving Michael Brown, and Ferguson was for lack of a better explanation, a kind of an outskirt it was outside the area of St. Louis, Missouri. So it was a very diverse city, very similar in size to the city that I work in, Greer. I believe it was approximately 30,000 people. They had about 50 or 60 police officers. So it, you know, the size of that town was very similar to what you see in South Carolina. But there was a strong armed robbery that occurred in a convenience store in that city. And as the police arrived, they had interaction with the suspect, who was Michael Brown. And an incident occurred where Michael Brown ended up being shot, and he died as a result of the gunshot. So there was a serious discussion and a dispute of the facts of how that incident occurred. There were many versions of the story. We had witnesses who conflicted with each other, and you know, nationally, this discussion led to, you know, there's a technology out there, and it's body cameras, and it would have been really, really great to have that body camera on that day in Ferguson, Missouri. So that became one of the leading discussions with law enforcement, is how can we hold ourselves more accountable, and also in turn the interactions with citizens. You know, all the activity and the interaction, the discussions, the you know, the words, the communication back and forth. You know, we do have that technology to document those things accurately. So there was a big push to, let's get body cams out there, and it was a rapid process from 2000 and, you know, late in 2014, and you go about 2 years later into 2016 or 17. I'm going to estimate probably at least half of law enforcement across the country had body cams in that short period of time. The technology at the time was not quite where we needed it to perform as our job demands out of that technology. There were a lot of issues with battery longevity, storage capacities, cost to keep the technology operational and working, and replacement. Digital storage is an issue. We'll probably elaborate on that. But so South Carolina got on board. In June of 2015, the South Carolina Legislator passed the Body-Worn Camera Act, and that required the Training Council in South Carolina to establish guidelines for law enforcement agencies in our state to put in use body-worn cameras. So the Training Council did establish a set of standards, and all police agencies in South Carolina had to present our policies and procedures on the use of body-worn cameras, and that had to be approved. Funding has always been a challenge when there's a mandate from the legislature, and then, you know, cities and counties across the state, local governments have to find a way to pay for these things. These are very expensive to get going and maintain over time and store the digital data. There was a funding mechanism that was established, and so the South Carolina Department of Public Safety was tasked with the management of the body-worn camera fund that the state does provide. Absolutely does not provide all of the funding necessary, but they do provide some funding that does help. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Campos, and I believe he's going to talk a little bit more and elaborate on how body-worn cameras are useful and maybe some of the issues to consider when using body-worn cameras. So, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. First, I'll start by saying anyone in the community that's interested about how the police department is using their body-worn cameras, we all have policies and procedures that guide our officers on how they use their cameras. Often I get questions about when does the officer have to turn the camera on, when does the camera not have to be on, and that all can be answered through the policy. So I know you can ask me for my policy. Most of the chiefs will give you their policy and what the practice and procedure is. Since we've implemented them, law enforcement was apprehensive when it first came out that they had to start wearing them, and the officers felt like they were being under the microscope. They felt like they were going to get micromanaged about how they did their jobs. But since we've implemented them and the officers have been wearing them, they've been more and more accepting of them. As a matter of fact, I have some officers now that if they don't have one, they don't want to go out into the public, so that they see the value in that and how they do their jobs and how it enhances how they do. It's also a good accountability tool. It helps us as managers, as part of our policies and as part of my policy, our supervisors are supposed to do random checks of videos to make sure the officers are using the body-worn cameras properly, that they're turning them on when they're supposed to, and that their conduct is within the guidelines of the department. So once a month at least, our supervisors have to randomly check videos to make sure that they're uploading them, they're marking them, and they're conducting themselves accordingly. And obviously, whenever we receive a complaint against an officer, our policy states that when they have contact with members of the public, it has to be recording. So we go looking for the recording to see how that interaction occurred and to see whether or not what's being alleged actually occurred or not. So it's really good for us to follow up. It's also really good for training. We capture things on video that we can train our officers on how to better handle things, or get examples of what a good way of handling something is. So it's very useful for us. In court, it's extremely useful. In our society today, almost everybody expects a video to exist. In court, a lot of our jurors don't take people's word for what happened a lot of times, and if there's no video to back it up, they tend not to believe the witness. So as much as what we can capture on video for those cases, the better, because they can look at the video and evaluate it for themselves and make their determination. As the chief mentioned earlier, it is costly. Just as an example, I just am in the process of placing an order for 14, and it's $11,000 for 14. And that's not counting the storage and everything that goes with it. There are several different manufacturers of body-worn cameras, and all of them have different features. The particular camera that we're going to and that we're using now is made by a company called Axon. It's the same company that makes our tasers. And one of the biggest reasons why we went to them, that they are a very good product. They have a lot of good features, but the feature that I like the most is the camera will activate the recording whenever one of our officers pulls their taser and activates it. It automatically sends a signal out to ensure that not only his or her camera is working, but any camera in a 30-foot radius that's there will activate. So if one of the other officers hadn't hit their camera to record yet, once that taser is activated, it activates it. And there's other devices that will activate it as well. I know Axon makes a device that you could put in the firearm holster that when it's removed, it sends the same signal out. And the reason for that is, a lot of things that our officers deal with happen very quickly and very dynamic. And there's a lot of things that they're dealing with. And a lot of times, especially if they have to defend themselves or someone else, they may hit the camera thinking they activated it, but they didn't hit it well enough for it to activate. And people hear that and they go, oh, that's baloney. Well, when there's an officer that's with them that has their camera on and is recording the other officer, you can see that other officer reach up and hit their camera trying to activate it, and it just didn't activate. So we have video recording showing that the officer tried to do that, but because of everything that's going on, it just didn't activate. So the more that we can move towards taking that extra step out of the officer's thought process when they're dealing with a dynamic situation, the better probability we have of some video being captured to see what's actually going on. And then there's a lot of other physiological things that go into play when you're in a fight, where your dexterity starts to diminish, and I won't get into the weeds in that, but that's another reason why, where the officer may have thought they turned it on and they actually didn't do it. There's a lot of privacy issues that come into play here, and even though the state guides us in the law and all of that, but there are privacy issues for individuals. So we have to also have the ability to be able to redact the videos that are made, and that can be very time consuming and costly as far as software and equipment to do that. And depending on how many FOIA requests we get, which body worn camera video is not FOIA accessible here in the state, but there are times that we have to redact that, and that can be also very time consuming. Let's see. One of the things I'll mention too, and if someone else is going to speak to it, I'll stop. But there are limitations to what the camera can capture. So you are looking at a 2D dimension, and in our world we're 3D, and we can see peripheral vision, and we can smell things, and we can sense things that the camera doesn't necessarily pick up. So there, we have to also remember, when we purchase cameras like this, we don't purchase cameras that have abilities that are beyond the normal human senses, especially when it comes to eyesight. So one of the things that I'm asked is, well, why doesn't your cameras have night vision? Well, because night vision is an enhancement beyond what the human eye can see. And under the law, when we hold officers accountable, there's a reasonable officer standard, what a reasonable officer would see or perceive, etc. And if we start employing equipment that sees something that the officer doesn't see, now we're holding the officers accountable for things that they humanly can't do. So we have to be able to level that out and make sure that we're not doing something that would interfere with the officer's testimony, recollection, etc. So Chief Hamby, I think I covered a lot of that. What else do you have to add?
Very thorough coverage there, Chief. I appreciate that. I've got a few notes I've scratched, and I've crossed most of them out because you knocked them out. But some of the other issues we've seen occur, as if an officer has to use physical movement significantly, the body worn camera can fall off. They're usually attached to a magnetic mount on their clothing, so that can happen. And obviously we would lose the visual accounting of the incident at that point. One thing that I like to encourage people when they want to watch and replay an incident that an officer was involved with, I recommend that they watch it one time, and that's it. They're going to be tempted to hit rewind, replay it over again, put it in slow motion, zoom in. Well, unfortunately, the officer did not have that opportunity. So I like to recommend, just to be fair, watch that video just one time. Some of the incidences that I've seen on national news would be whether or not a suspect, for example, in a foot pursuit, had a gun in their possession or not, or maybe the officer perceived a gun, or maybe it was a toy gun. And those things are really hard to pick up with the naked eye versus a body camera. And I've seen it where they will zoom in with, on the news, they'll zoom in and show how accurate the officer's call was. And I would like to say that, this is not like a NFL football game where you get to do the replay, the referee kind of thing, and find out were they out of bounds or not, replay it over and over, because it's really not fair. The officer did not, it was a rapidly evolving incident, and it was fluid and it was fast, and the officer did not know the outcome before it happened. So in all fairness, I ask the community to just keep that in mind when we're watching these things as we move forward. So I'm glad that I have this opportunity to just put that out there. That's one of those things that I don't hear say. It's not really said very often, but I like to put that out there. And also on the privacy issue, Chief was already covering most of that. There have been some debates about whether or not all body-worn camera footage should be transparent with the Freedom of Information Act law in South Carolina. And as Chief said, it's not fully accessible by a Freedom of Information Act request. And I do support that. And here's why. A lot of police officers, as we go through our day in our jobs, we have discussions with people. They confide in us about various things. We have talks that, they trust us with some information they're sharing. Sometimes we're in people's homes. Well, frequently we're inside people's homes. They may invite us in. We may be investigating a burglary in their house. Well, I'm not so sure that the homeowners would appreciate the contents of their home, the valuables that they have, maybe the state of dress they're in. Maybe they didn't have a chance to put makeup on or get dressed and look nice. But I would hate for all that footage to be available to be broadcast on the local news. They may be explaining an incident that has to do with marriage challenges or child custody issues. And for all of that private business to be available for everybody to share, I have serious concerns about that. And I personally am not worried about the officers' discussions. I'm more about, if people are not able to comfortably talk to police officers because they know that they're being recorded and that recording could be subject to be on the local news, for example, they're not going to trust us. Trust is an issue already. So I'll just add that. I really appreciate what Chief offered, and we will open up a period for questions after. We'll quickly cover the topic of license plate readers at this point. I'll ask Justine to play that quick video, then we'll quickly turn it over to Captain Foreman after that.
We started Flock to eliminate nonviolent crime, and that's because 87% of crime goes unsolved throughout the U.S. It's not due to a lack of trying on the law enforcement side. It's because there's a lack of evidence. So we asked police across the nation, what is that critical factor that can help you solve more crime? And we heard time and time again, license plates are the critical missing piece.
70% of major crimes are committed with a vehicle, and license plates give police the lead they need to actually solve crime. And we saw that there was technology on the market that could solve that evidence gap, but the technology was large, very expensive. There was something that could work, but just didn't fit the need. We solved those problems with solar power, integrated cellular, and modern electronics to make the camera small and affordable so we can put this powerful technology in the hands of a regular neighborhood. So after 2.5 years, Flock Safety is in 36 states. We're working with several hundred police departments, and we're helping them solve 4 to 5 crimes an hour.
Privacy is very important to Flock, and we have done a lot to protect privacy of our customers. The consumer has all the access to the data. They can decide if they want to share that with just the HOA board or the residents of the entire community.
We make it really easy for you to pull footage in the event that a crime occurs. Because our solution is web-based, any authorized user can log in from a device that has internet access. Once inside the portal, you simply use our robust filtering features to either filter on date, time, vehicle attributes, or even partial plate number to get right down to the evidence you need in a few clicks. Armed with Flock footage, law enforcement now has the actionable evidence they need to solve crime. Flock cameras can be installed just about anywhere. What differentiates Flock from other automated license plate reading cameras is that we leverage solar plus battery along with cellular for data communication, eliminating upfront costs.
So a Flock Safety license plate reading camera is a camera that takes pictures of all traffic in front of the camera, but our cameras go the extra step and look for identifying features like color of the vehicle, type of vehicle, make of vehicle, state of the license plate. And these identified features, which we call vehicle fingerprint, help our police customers quickly sort through thousands and thousands of vehicles to find the ones that they need to solve crime.
The great thing about the Flock Safety camera is that it's affordable for any type of neighborhood or community.
Our mission is to eliminate nonviolent crime across the country. We can only do that by working with every neighborhood and every police department throughout the country. So please contact us so we can help you make your community safer.
So I hope everybody can forgive me. That was a semi-marketing video, but the company who produced that, they did a good job explaining how the technology works. So I'm not promoting that particular company. I don't think many people here are on the market to buy license plate readers anyway, so I didn't get too concerned. But so forgive me for that advertisement. But anyway, I'll turn it over to Captain Foreman now so he can share a little bit of how the Simpsonville Police Department is using license plate readers.
Thank you, Chief. I appreciate the invite today. Really for Simpsonville, what we've done is we've looked at solvability of crimes, and a lot of things like vehicle break-ins, things along that line. They all have one thing in common, and that's vehicles bringing people into neighborhoods. Simpsonville, we leverage right now 12 cameras. We have a few more that are out there on mobile platforms that we move around the city. When we hit, we do a DDAX or a directed patrol each month. And when we have noticed crime trends, such as auto breakings and things along that line, we can move these cameras into those areas quite easily and hopefully get information that we need to solve these crimes. Right now, South Carolina doesn't have any requirements on LPRs or license plate readers. I think there are a couple of bills that are currently pending, but none have been passed at this time. Really, we use them again to solve crimes. Our investigators can take a known person that we've been watching and monitoring for crime. We put their information on the vehicle in these Flock camera systems, and it actually shows where they're at in the city in real time. And it'll actually shoot that investigator an email or a text and say, this vehicle is in this area at this time. We've used it for recovering stolen property, locating vehicles on Amber Alerts, pretty much anything you can think of where a license plate reader would be in effect and be useful. We've pretty much used it for that area. We went with Flock, and I'm not a salesperson either. The main reason we went with Flock was due to cost. They're roughly $2,000 a year to maintain one camera, and a normal LPR system that you would put on a car would run about $25,000. So I can get more cameras, more eyes out in the communities. Flock does provide their service to individual communities. So as community activists, if you have an HOA and you want these cameras, you can contact Flock. They'll provide the information to whatever law enforcement is in your area, whether it's sheriff's office or Greenville City or Greer or Simpsonville, and they'll actually provide that information to us. So we'll be able to search those cameras when you have an incident in your area and be able to produce leads off of that. They're objective and unbiased. Really all they're doing, it's really like me taking a patrolman and sitting him on a corner and asking him to write down every tag that he sees and hold on to that data so we can go back and look later to see what was there. I know Flock, especially if you do it as a community, you can actually opt your tag out. It'll look at your tag if you live there and it won't record your car, which was a good feature that they provide. We really want to use this to build trust within the community in use of this technology. Really because they share the information with us. for any individual camera that's out there. We actually share our cameras with all the way up into Tennessee, Greenville City, Greenwood County. Anybody that has flock cameras can share those cameras. I had an incident the other day where we had a car. We couldn't get a good picture of his license plate, but I put it in the system, found it, the same car in Greenville City on the same day that had the identifying marks where we allowed us to close out a case. That was just really quickly, just taking 10 or 15 minutes to find that vehicle. And that's one. We had many stolen vehicles that we've had come through the city, not just from Simpsonville, but Greer and out of state, that it hits and tells us, hey, this vehicle's in your jurisdiction. Here's where it is, and here's what it looks like. Because let's face it, when they steal the car, they don't always leave the same tag on it. They tend to put stolen tags on stolen cars. So you'll get the stolen tag alert, and then you'll see the different picture of a different car. We just had one, a murder several months back, where we actually were able to corroborate information using this system and put people in jail for murder. Really, we use these LPRs to check tags through the National Crime Information Computer, or NCIC. This provides us with somewhat real time. It's generally anywhere a lag of 15 seconds to a minute before that tag will come up and show as stolen, or it's a terrorist threat group, or it's an Amber Alert, or this person is a convicted sex offender, whatever. We alerts that are set, and allows us to monitor that without having to send someone there to that location 24/7 forever. Cameras are not being pointed into houses. They're really just, the only thing they take pictures of are moving vehicles. The information is not stored. It's not sold. That actually, the data is searchable for 30 days and then it's gone. So if we don't know, if we have a crime that's occurred more than 30 days ago, flock is not any use to us. So really, again, what is allowing us to do is have eyes in the community without having to pay the exorbitant price of having a patrolman to sit there. So, Chief, I'm not sure what else I can go over, but I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I appreciate that, Captain, and very, very thorough presentation. And I'm sure if there's anything left, people can ask that question as we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim Shue.
Chief Hamby.
Yes, please.
Can I add something about the ALPRs? Well, a lot of people don't realize currently right now there are a lot of private companies that are using ALPRs and are capturing that data and don't have the same oversight that the police do. Like the captain said, we all have policies that regulate how we use that information. We have to adhere to it. And those of us that are accredited have to show proof that we're following our own policies. So there is oversight on how we're using that information. Of course, we have to abide by the Constitution. We can't violate anybody's rights when we use these tools, but there are private companies out there that are using this information. And there's not the same kind of oversight with them as it is with law enforcement. So I just wanted to mention that because everybody thinks it's just the police that are doing this, the government's doing it, and it's not.
Very good point. I appreciate you sharing that, Chief. All right, so I guess we will move on with Jim Shue. He's going to moderate some questions, and between the three of us, we will do our best to provide answers.
Great. Thank you, Chief Hamby, and also thanks to this group. This is a great group. I can see a lot of familiar names and leaders in the community that have attended today. So thank you. And I think what's made these sessions, this being our second one, but what has made them valuable is just the dialogue that we can facilitate. So appreciate all the information that was shared by our law enforcement members, and kind of the way that we've structured this dialogue is we'll invite a couple of community leaders to ask questions, and that way that'll keep our conversation ongoing, and also hopefully keep us within the parameters of time that we've allocated for today. And then if anyone else has questions that they would like to ask, if you could put those in the chat within Zoom. Kim Kegler, I think, is on the line, and she is planning to handle the Q&A through the chat questions. But let me introduce, we've invited two community leaders to join us today to help with the questions and dialogue. First, Yvonne Reeder is joining us. She is a retired employee from Duke Energy, has 3 adult children, and is an active volunteer and leader in our community. I asked her this morning to share a little bit of her background in volunteer service and leadership roles that I could talk about, and it's so much, it's amazing, and really too long of a list. But let me highlight a few items. She is on the Greenville Tech Alumni Council since 1989. She is the past president of the Nicholtown Neighborhood Association. She also is part of the Nicholtown Early Childhood Learning Center Task Force. She is on the Self-Help Credit Union Advisory Board, the Greenville Forward Board, and on the GVL 2040 Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. She's also a graduate of the Riley Institute Diversity Leaders Initiative through Furman University, as well as a graduate of the Women's Leadership class from Furman University. She's been recognized also with many awards, and we really appreciate, Yvonne, you joining us today. Thank you so much. And then also joining us is my friend Corey Mcdowell. Corey is a lifelong native of Greenville. He is the current operations director of membership and wellness at the Kane Halter YMCA. He's been with the YMCA since 2002, originally serving as the facilities director at the Sterling Hope Center. And then later he was the YMCA Judson Community Center manager of all youth programming. And while there, the Judson Community Center received national accreditation through the Council on Accreditation for their after-school programs, and it's actually the only nationally accredited after-school program in the upstate of South Carolina. Corey, in 2012, Corey was also recognized as the Director of the Year for the Association of YMCA Professional Carolinas for that chapter. And Corey's also an alumni of Leadership Greenville, an alumni of the Multicultural Executive Career Advancement, YUSA, and an alumni of the YMCA of Greenville. A current member of YMCA of Greenville's Diversity and Inclusion Global Team. He also serves on the board for Greenville County First Steps and the Nicholtown Child and Family Collaborative. So Corey, thank you so much as well for joining us. I guess, Yvonne, maybe I'll turn it over to you if there is a question that you would like to ask our law enforcement team in either area on body worn cameras or the use of license plate readers. And you're on mute, I think.
Well, I like to thank the law enforcement division for all of their efforts in trying to maintain a safe neighborhood. It's extremely important that people feel safe in their day-to-day life. I asked several people in my community, on my street, and in my neighborhood, explained to them a little bit about technology that's being used with the law enforcement division. And the only concern that one of them had was that they wanted to feel like that the information is reliable and that someone on the outside can't hack into it and change stuff, you know, and make it be different than it really is. And then the other concern I had was that because of the tag readers that are on highways and different roads, if there's an auto accident that occurs, would that system also be used to determine the cause of the wreck?
Well, I can take the last part of that fairly easy, and the first. As far as hacking into the system, most of our body worn cameras are either on secure servers in the police departments, or they're in the cloud on secure servers through Microsoft Azure. I'm not sure which one a lot of them use, but that's generally the main ones they have. And they are encrypted data. So not anybody can just roll in. They're also, every frame is watermarked on those. So if you go in and change something, the watermarks are broken and you can tell that has been altered. The second half, as far as an ALPR being used for an auto accident, it's not a real-time photo. It's not a real-time movie. It's just a photo. So as your car goes past, it takes a picture of that license plate, and that's it. It may take one or two because it sees motion or it sees that same tag 2 or 3 times, but it's not going to show a real-time accident occurring.
That's great to know. It really helps to understand that. And the only other thing I can say is that these 2 devices also help the police to be safe also. And so I think that's a good thing.
Yes, ma'am. Accountability for us, transparency for us is huge right now. There is nothing that my officers are doing that I would not want you watching 24/7, period, end of sentence. Well, let me rephrase that. Most of the things that they're doing, their personal lives, I don't think you would want to watch 24/7. But the majority of what officers are doing, they are working hard in these communities to build these relationships. And we're trying to give them as much technology as we can to make their job easier and your life safer.
I'll pass on to Corey.
Awesome, thank you. One of the biggest things I had information about was the transparency. Thank you for answering that. But have the community been informed about the equipment that we're currently using in any other communities and why you chose those pieces of equipment?
As far as the ALPRs?
Yeah.
Okay. The reason we went with Flock was really due to cost. Each unit it cost us $2,500 a year to run. One ALPR system for one car for one officer that would be on the road 8 to 12 hours a day, 14 days a month. I can have 10 cameras out in different areas, in different communities, on different roadways for the price of the one system. So we went with Flock just because it was so cost friendly. That, and if communities wanted to, HOAs or even groups of communities wanted to get together and pay for their own cameras and allow us access, that includes like Walmart, any of those large businesses that wanted to put ALPRs going into their driveways. Really, it's almost like having a patrolman parked there. You have that little halo effect of, well, if I ride by it, they're going to know who I am. So really, the only reason we went with Flock was for cost.
Okay. One other question I had, I think it's for the body cameras. Is there a reasoning behind timelines that you guys release the video pieces that you guys have stored?
Ask that question again. I'm not sure I caught exactly what you were talking about.
The timelines that you guys have for the releasing of videos on body cameras, is there a reasoning behind the timelines, or are there, information gathering sessions or anything like that?
So I'm gonna take a wild stab at what you're asking me. I think what you're asking me is there a reason why we wait a particular amount of time if we decide to release body-worn camera video? Because the law doesn't prohibit us from releasing it, but we have the opportunity to release it if we choose to. And you're asking me, so I'll try to answer.
And Chief Campos, maybe also, when is it released versus when would it be retained,
so
I guess?
The release is strictly up to the law enforcement agency. You cannot do a FOIA request and get it. If a particular incident occurs, like say someone gets hurt or that there was a shooting or something, there's only specific people in the law that are allowed to get the video that to be released to. And you know, if the person that was involved in the incident or was arrested, they're the ones that are allowed to get it. If the person dies as a result of the incident, their family, immediate family, can request it, and that has to be like their parents or something. So it specifically states in the law who can get a copy of the video, but the agency can release the video if they want to. And I have a police advisory board that meets once a month, and we actually discuss this with the city attorney, because every state has every state's law is different when it comes to the release of body-worn cameras. So you really got to know what the state of South Carolina will allow for release and not. So as a chief law enforcement, I mean, as the chief, I have to decide when it's most beneficial to my community for that video to be released, what's going to be released. And I also have to ensure that I'm maintaining the integrity of any criminal case that may be coming forward, because we still have to impanel a jury that has to make an impartial decision. And if we just arbitrarily release the video and those people are then affected by what they see in the news and how it's spun, we may not be able to impanel an impartial jury. So these are all things that we have to consider before we release the video. I can tell you most of us, and I can't speak for everyone, but most of us have seen other agencies, and I know they do this in Greenville and in Greenville County, especially if it's an officer involved shooting. They put for lack of a better description, a informational video together that includes some body-worn camera footage to explain to the community what happened. Especially if there's members of the community that have their own video and they're only showing their portion of the video of what's going on. And as we said earlier, you know, there's limitations as to what you see. So what a camera captures on one angle, another camera is capturing something different at another angle. So if it's going to cause enough of an uproar in the community, then as the leaders, we have to decide, okay, we need to put information out to let the public know what we know at that point. Some people have asked, well, why don't you just release all of the video? Well, especially if there's an impending criminal case, we may not be able to do that because we may jeopardize the integrity of the case. So it's information that has to come out in court. So it's always a balance as to when that stuff goes out. Did that kind of answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, so Corey, Yvonne, there's a few questions in the chat that Kim has sent to me that I thought I might ask, unless you all have other items you wanted to bring up.
You can go ahead and ask those questions first, and then if I have one that doesn't coexist with the ones I'm seeing now.
Okay, great. So one question that came up through the participants is, are the local police departments or law enforcement departments starting to see the use of drones? The chief mentioned there's a concern regarding privacy and individuals' Fourth Amendment rights to privacy and oversight. So are we seeing drones being used by police, and is there concern that may infringe upon privacy, and how's that being addressed, I guess is the question.
Jim, I'll be glad to respond to that.
Okay.
We have a drone program at our police department, and a lot of police departments and sheriff's offices are doing the same. So we have a policy that addresses privacy and Fourth Amendment rights, and under certain circumstances, we would be required to have a search warrant. If we're going to use the visual aid of a zoom lens, for example, on a drone to access something that you would not normally be able to see from the public domain, and if it's an investigation of a crime, we would be required to obtain a search warrant for that. There are circumstances where we would not necessarily obtain a search warrant, and that would be for like, a fleeing felon who's fled the scene of a crime. Due to the exigency that exists under those circumstances, a warrant would not necessarily be needed to pursue that subject, missing children, missing persons, that type of thing. And most of the use that we may have, as far as most of the flying time that we've used our drones for thus far have been oversight for special events. So we have for example, we have a 15-acre park right in the middle of our city. And for safety and observation, we keep drones up in the air for those reasons, and we'll monitor parking lots and that type of thing, just to make sure people aren't breaking into cars, and they're on the ready to go in case something bad were to occur. We have a set of eyes ready to watch and go anywhere in just a few seconds. So it's a very valuable tool, and we don't have the ability or even the desire to, zoom in on people and read their lips and that kind of thing. It's not anything like that. I mean, it's a very drawn back, you're looking at 3 or 4 acres of property at one time. So it's basically like riding in an airplane, except you're not that high. So those are some of the uses that we use the drone for, but also we use it for crime scene documentation. We had a fatality collision just a few days ago on one of our main arteries in Greer. And so it was probably a 300-foot long crime scene. And we documented that with the drone. And we also have something we're going to be working towards soon, and that's implementing a program called PIX 4D. And it goes along with the drone, and it takes some of the aerial video or still pictures, and it uses some spatial sensitivity and develops 3-dimensional to scale diagrams that are almost like you're standing in the midst of the crime scene, and you're able to take that in a digital format and do measurements and all that sort of thing. So the drone program has so many different uses. I'm very excited about the future of that. So that's one of those things that I can speak of here in Greer.
Hey, well, Chief Amby, I think you actually answered the next question in the chat that was from Mark McKinney about technologies that you anticipate or look forward to using in the future. And I know we're pushing right up on time. So there might be a couple more questions, but Dean, I'm going to turn it back over to you just in the interest of time management here. And thank you to everyone for your participation today.
Great. Thank you, Jim. And again, yes, I want to especially thank our law enforcement officers, as well as Corey and Yvonne, for your thoughts. This is an ongoing discussion about issues around what's happening with law enforcement in the community. And so we look forward to the upcoming sessions, and I hope you'll plan on joining us. We'll be sending out details about the next one soon. To close this out, I'm going to turn over to my chairman and the mayor of the city of Anderson, Mayor Roberts, who really was the force behind creating a Safer Upstate initiative, to say a few words and to close this out. So Mayor Roberts.
Thank you, Dean, and thank you for everyone participating today, in particular Chief Hamby, Jim Shue. Thank you. Our guests that were involved, law enforcement. When Dean and I sat down many months ago and thought about this idea of creating Safer Upstate, the workshops and everything involved has been great. Most times when I listen in on things, I can take back to my community, my constituents, my law enforcement team, or you learn something new every time, and it's comforting to know that our law enforcement works with our citizens and communities throughout the upstate. So again, thank you for all who participated. And hopefully we'll keep this going on the next workshop, and we'll see you a little bit later. I hope everybody, we're getting close to the weekend. Everybody have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody.